So Derrick James and Errol Spence are suing each other. Oh yes, it's all ended in tears. The very fruitful working relationship that lasted well over a decade has now descended into a bitter legal dispute. Derrick James has been working with Errol Spence since Spence was a teenager. They actually used to spar with each other. That's how tight they were, or so people thought. The reality is, there are very few real friends in boxing, if any, and the sooner you come to that realization, whether you're a fighter, a trainer, or whoever, the safer you're going to be financially. Now, in this particular case, to give you a rundown, the standard fee for a trainer in America is 10%. Now, with pay-per-view fighters, they get paid a baseline purse, and then they get a percentage of pay-per-view revenue on top of that. And the difference between the baseline and the full purse, especially in America, is often massive. So, for example, for his fight with Terence Crawford, Errol Spence's baseline purse was something in the region of $3 million. But his full purse, after he got his cut of the pay-per-view revenue, was closer to $25 million. And so in Derrick James's lawsuit, he alleges that Spence only paid him 10% of the baseline purse rather than the full purse. So something like 300 grand rather than 2.5 million. And obviously Derrick James feels like he's entitled legally to 10% of the full purse, not just the baseline. He also claims that Spence shortchanged him on several previous fights as well in the same way. He's said to have records of a conversation between him and Spence where Spence allegedly admits that he did Derrick James dirty and that he's gonna rectify everything and pay him the money that he should have been paying him all along. It's said in Derrick James's claim that a person called Al, I wonder who that could be, a person called Al advised Errol Spence that paying Derrick James 300 grand was generous, never mind 2.5 mil. Now, regardless of what conversation James claims to have had with Spence, Spence subsequently filed his own lawsuit against Derrick James. Ostensibly, Spence's argument is that Derrick James never complained about the money he was getting for previous fights, nor did he complain about the money he got for the Crawford fight until 6 months after the fact. So if it was such an issue, why are you waiting that long to complain? Presumably, Spence's lawyers are going to try and argue that Derrick James is only doing this because Errol Spence has decided to leave him, and he was happy with the money he was getting up to that point. Now he's looking for loopholes or whatever to try and salvage something out of the situation, because obviously Errol Spence leaving him is going to leave a big hole in his pocket, although he's now got Ryan Garcia. And moving forward, Derrick James better cross his T's and dot his I's with contracts with fighters such as Ryan Garcia when it comes to what he's getting 10% of. Now, this whole situation is kind of reminiscent of the fallout between Gennady Golovkin and Abel Sanchez. They were working together for many years, very successfully, but then Gennady Golovkin did a deal with DAZN, which was said to be worth something like $100 million, at which point he told Abel Sanchez he doesn't want to pay him his 10%, whatever it was. Instead, I want to pay you a flat fee. So you're not going to get, let's say, 10% of my earnings moving forward. Abel Sanchez then broke off their relationship. He said he was very disappointed. He accused Gennady Golovkin of being greedy. That situation didn't end up in court, as far as I'm aware, but it was certainly an acrimonious split. Now, unless you're an insider in one of these camps, then you can never know for certain exactly how much work a trainer is doing with a fighter, because oftentimes these trainers have got other fighters, they've got their own personal lives, they've got busy schedules, and so while they might own a gym, they aren't necessarily there as often as you might assume. In many instances, they have assistants and what have you who help train fighters. Now, I'm not saying that was the case with Abel Sanchez. Maybe Gennady Golovkin had his undivided attention, I don't know, but I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility. With all these situations, with Derrick James, Errol Spence, with Sanchez and Golovkin, whoever. What I will say though, and what we do know about Abel Sanchez, is that he did a tremendous job promoting Gennady Golovkin, and he weren't even Golovkin's promoter. That's not what he was being paid to do. Golovkin's actual promoter at that time was K2, I believe, the Klitschko promotional company, and their frontman was Tom Loeffler. Now, Loeffler is kind of a quiet, unassuming character. He wasn't exactly beating the drum week in, week out, doing interviews week in, week out for Gennady Golovkin, was he? But Abel Sanchez was doing that. So when you combine the training duties with the apparently free promotion that Abel Sanchez used to do for Golovkin, you do wonder whether Abel Sanchez had a point and that Golovkin was being greedy. I remember right around that time, Golovkin dropped the whole good boy act, and it was an act. A lot of people got sucked into it. A lot of people wanted to be sucked in by it. But no, it was an act. Golovkin eventually turned heel, which I found quite funny. I actually liked him a bit better as a heel. He really was WWE or old school WWF type vibes. And that was always entertaining back in the days in WWF when a face turned heel. That was always funny. Yeah, I'm an old school WWF fan from the 80s and 90s. But anyway, there you have it. Another fighter trainer split acrimoniously. It's standard fare in boxing, really. We see this stuff all the time. From when George Groves left Adam Booth, Carl Frampton leaving the McGuigans, Golovkin leaving Sanchez. I know in some of these cases, it's not just trainers and fighters, it's also managers and promoters and all that. But still, the reason I cite these examples is because so many people fell into the trap of believing that the bond between these people was like family or something. Oh no, don't go believing that. That way lies damnation. Boxing is a business first and foremost, and everybody's out for their own interests. And that's the way it has to be. It can't all be kumbaya and harmonious. You just have to get your legals in order up front as best you can to avoid anything messy down the line. You know, sometimes when people are too friendly, they let certain things slide. Is that what happened with Derrick James and Errol Spence? Because they were friendly, was Derrick James allowing Spence to get away with shortchanging him? Is Derrick James claiming that he didn't know Spence was shortchanging him? I mean, surely he can't be that naive. He must have had some notion of what Errol Spence's full purses were. He can't have really thought that Spence was only getting the baseline purse every time, you know, thinking the baseline was the full purse every time. He can't have really thought that, surely. I know Derrick James didn't have a successful career financially when he was a pro, but you would have thought over the decades of training fighters and having lots of conversations that he would know something about the business at this point. But moving forward, as I say, James needs to cross the T's and dot the I's with fighters he works with from here on in. A lot of boxing fans have lost interest in Errol Spence ever since that brutal defeat to Terence Crawford. Maybe they think he's washed. I don't know. And I say that to talk about who's going to train Errol Spence next, because a lot of people just won't care. What I will say is I'm not sure you can really do much with Spence that hasn't already been done. I suspect he's reached his ceiling as a fighter. Perhaps moving up in weight will make him a bit stronger, but the guys he'll be fighting are stronger. And Spence has never been an athletic phenom. He's a guy that does the basics well, the fundamentals well. He doesn't have terrific hand speed or outlandish punching power or incredible mobility. He's pretty basic. But as I say, he does the basics well, and he always had a great engine. So we'll see what happens with him. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below. And before I go, I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers to my Patreon page. I cover loads of different topics in my weekly podcast, as you can see on screen right now, from current events to deep dives down the rabbit hole and everything in between. I'm really enjoying the feedback and the discussions we've been having on there lately. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just click the link in the description box below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast, where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.